Hello, everybody. My name is Josh. I'm with Vistacom. If you were here for our last presentation, Vistacom did a presentation with Winstead, and we talked all about control room design, best practices for designing your operations center, everything from improving situational awareness with all of your different data sources to avoiding situational blindness and ergonomics for your operators. So on that point, we talked about improving situational awareness with your visualization in your operations centers, and it's a great tie-in to what Azena is doing. So with me is Andrew Seymour. He's going to be your next presenter. He is with Azena, and they are doing some pretty great things with intelligent apps that are connected to your surveillance cameras, different camera endpoints, and that type of thing. So with that, Andrew, take it away.
Thanks. Yeah, so I appreciate it. Yes, my name is Andrew Seymour. I'm a business development manager with Azena. And today I'm going to walk you through what Azena is, what we do, specifically how we can help improve operational efficiencies and business outcomes using data from security cameras. I'm also going to take you on a tour of our application store because we are a platform. And I'll show you some demonstrations of both off-the-shelf analytics that we have available, as well as customizable applications that we've developed to solve kind of emerging use cases for specific customers. So if you're not familiar with us, we are a wholly owned Bosch company. We're a spin-out from Bosch. We have 3 offices located globally, 2 in Europe and 1 in Pittsburgh. That's where I'm based out of. And I very briefly wanted to touch on the Pittsburgh office because if any of you were here yesterday and heard Dr. Doss's presentation on audio AI, they are co-located with us in the Bosch Research and Technology Center in Pittsburgh. So we actually work quite closely together, but the office generally focuses on cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, as well as Internet of Things research and technology. And so we sort of were born out of that with developing our own platform for security cameras where we can get additional insights out of these devices. So we're actually working on, in the space of gunshot detection, collaborating between the audio portion that our Bosch colleagues are working on and pairing that with the video analytics that we're working on. So what is Azena? Well, we are a platform, an open platform for security cameras. So the idea is that we are trying to take the concept that Google and Apple pioneered 20 years ago or so with the concept of turning a dumb phone into a smartphone. We're trying to take that same concept and bring it into the world of security cameras. So if you remember a cell phone 20 years ago, you had a flip phone, you could text, you could call, that was pretty much it, right? All of a sudden, the idea of a smartphone comes along, and you now have so much more. You have access to an application store that gives you programs that can help you accomplish so many different things with your phone that you were never previously able to do. And that's what we want to be able to do for security cameras. So we have a platform with a corresponding application store, but in the context of Azena, each app is a computer vision analytic. So it could be something in the space of traditional security, or it could be something completely custom and off the wall that doesn't currently exist. And what this enables you to do is mix and match different applications on the same camera or different cameras and even retrofit devices once they're out in the field. So you're never stuck with a static device the same way it was when you purchased it. So it's something where you have a future-proof and flexible solution to solve a variety of problems. So with that being said, what is the challenge that we are trying to solve? So within the security space, we have observed a great deal of vendor lock within the industry. And so how that might shake out in the real world is you might go to one vendor for an end-to-end solution for fire detection, maybe another solution for people counting, maybe another solution for heat mapping, and perhaps those 3 solutions will never talk to one another. So you end up with what we're trying to illustrate here, which is data silos. So we have information that is helpful to us, but they're not necessarily sharing between the 2. So we're not getting the full picture of what's going on with a specific solution. And so that's the challenge we're trying to solve with Azena, which is a much more mix and match approach to the security space. So you can pick any Azena compliant piece of hardware, regardless of form factor, whatever works for you. So long as it's running the Azena OS, we can pull analytics from our app store. Again, these are all computer vision analytics. And these apps can not only provide whatever analytic they're designed to provide, but they can also talk to each other at the edge, do all of this processing, and then send the metadata or the video feed to a centralized endpoint for additional processing and analysis of that information. So when I say any endpoint, what am I talking about here? Well, we have a variety of tools that we've built to help enable both integrations with traditional security deployments, so think VMSs, as well as what we're increasingly seeing out in the space, out in the world rather, which is more of an IoT focus. So really curious about the metadata and how we can use that to improve our business outcomes. So we sort of view Azena as living with 1 foot in the world of traditional security and 1 foot in the world of IoT. So we're not disturbing or upending the traditional security space, but we are augmenting it with additional metadata for you and potentially for your customers. So when we're talking about a VMS, the Azena platform broadly incorporates OnVIF Profiles S&T. So at that level, you're going to get all of the things that you're expecting from any normal traditional security camera with your bounding boxes, video stream, and your general configuration that you're expecting with a security camera. So nothing really changes on that front. But what's even more interesting, like I alluded to a moment ago regarding IoT, is that you can also take the metadata from these applications and fire them off into common cloud platforms like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Power BI, you name it, whatever endpoint you're looking to send information to, we can send it there using the tools we have baked in. And then lastly, within our hardware, we also have the ability to send to trigger alerts to physical devices. So as an example, we have numerous license plate reading apps in our store. You could put that on an Azena-enabled camera and actually wire it up to a physical gate so that if it's a whitelist with tenants in an apartment building, for example, as soon as a tenant pulls up, they'll read that plate, the gate will open, and they'll be allowed in. So just one example of how you can also integrate this into some larger security use cases like access control or lighting or something along those lines. So broadly speaking, we have a number of tools built in to help you get the data where you need it to go, whether that's, again, traditional security, video footage, or more modern metadata for other purposes. And so as I mentioned, we have an app store. Currently we have over 100 different analytics, unique analytics available, and these are mostly off-the-shelf solutions. Some of them require a little bit of tweaking or maybe more or less depending on the app, but by and large, what's in the store is ready to go. So I think the next thing I'll show you now is a brief tour around the app store, what it looks like to actually buy an analytic, and then how would I put that onto a camera. Once I've finished with that, we'll talk a little bit more about custom solutions as well as a couple of live video of some of these off-the-shelf apps. So this is the Azena application store. If you folks want to browse this on your own, feel free. Go to our website. It's up in the top right corner. And it looks, as you can see, very similar to what you might recognize for your smartphone. So it's searchable. So if you're looking for a specific thing like LPR again, you can throw that right in the search bar. It'll pop up. And it's also organized by use case and industry. So if you're looking for something very specific, you can kind of browse around based on what your needs are. So within this app store, if I scroll down, let's say I'm looking for an LPR solution maybe as an example. Let's say I'm going to go with this one from Flow, one of our developers, so Flow ALPR. So all I have to do is click that app, and each application has its own page with usually a corresponding video, and all of the technical information you might need in order to put this onto a camera. Each app comes with a free 30-day trial, and I'll show you in a moment that it's extremely easy to extend that free trial if you want. So the idea here is that with Azena, we really want to encourage people to do A/B testing. So if there's multiple applications that claim to do the same thing, this 30-day free trial really enables you to, number one, verify that the app does what it claims to do, but also run it up against competitors if that's interesting for you. So if I click try for free, it drops me down into the pricing section. And because I'm on a VPN, it's going to show the price in euros. But if you're a US customer, of course, that would be in US dollars. And I enter how many trial licenses do I want. So it's possible to have multiple 30-day free trials of the same app. So if you had like 10 cameras to get everything kind of running, you want to make sure everything's working smoothly, you could buy multiple trial apps. Once I do that, I add it to my cart. And you'll see it pops up in the top right, just like you would expect. And when I'm ready to go, I just hit checkout and place order. So now I have this demo license for this LPR app, and I can push it to any number of different devices, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. So I'm going to jump up here to the device management portal. And this is a breakdown of all the different devices that you might have in your account. And it can be organized in whatever way makes sense for you. So it can be, camera name, location, what have you. We've also launched a new feature recently called Projects, which you can see on the top left. And that allows you to, if you're a system integrator, designate certain cameras to one customer and other cameras to another customer, so that if you're working with potential competitors, you're not necessarily showing them that you're using Azena for both of them, right? So the really compelling thing here within the device management portal is that I can quickly and easily push new analytics to any one of my devices out in the field on the fly, if they're connected to the internet. So you can kind of see on the right here, I've got each image indicates a different analytic that's currently on whichever device we're looking at. So as an example, let's say I wanted to push an analytic to these two devices up top. I click this button over here on the right, I hit Install App. It's searchable, so again, if I have many licenses that I've recently purchased, I can kind of browse through those. And you simply choose whichever analytic it is you're looking to add by selecting the trial, jumping down to the bottom and hitting install. And it's something that'll install in a couple of seconds. It's very similar to what you would experience on a smartphone. Yeah, so for this specific demonstration, I'm not going to actually install this app, but that's pretty much the long and short of it. It's very straightforward for you to add a new analytic on the fly without going on site if the device is connected to the internet. And you're giving your customers or yourselves a future-proof solution that you can modify based on your specific business needs. The last thing I'll mention in here as well is if you do need to extend your free trial, we make it very easy. So in that same pane where I can install the app, I can also request an extended trial. The other thing you folks might notice, and this is a question that frequently comes up, is how many analytics can I run on one camera? And the answer to that is there's no hard and fast rule. We're running very high horsepower chipsets in these devices, so they're Qualcomm chipsets, and they're capable of running many analytics at once. In our testing in our office, we've had as many as 9 or 10 apps running simultaneously on a camera before we start noticing a degradation in performance. And that it is very dependent on the app too, like what's the app doing, how much processing power is it using. But just as a point of reference, really the question you have to ask yourself isn't so much about how many apps can live on a camera, but it's where is the camera mounted, right? It's more of a logistical question, because if you're trying to, like I keep going back to here, if you're trying to create an LPR solution, you're probably not going to be using that same camera for people counting, for example, because it's not mounted in a way that would make sense for that use case. So that's really more of the limiting factor rather than the processing power of the device itself. Okay, so now that we've kind of gotten an idea of what it looks like to do all of this, and again, I think this is valuable because as far as Azena is concerned, we are the only platform that is doing this within the security space. There's nothing the same as this where you can go in, pick an analytic, install it on a camera, and run with it. So now I'd like to walk you through a couple of pseudo-live demos. We actually have live demos at the table, so if there's something you want to see in person, we can do that after the discussion here. Very quickly, I'll also touch on the hardware that's available. So from a Bosch perspective, any of the Intiox models will run Azena Analytics. So you've got options like as ruggedized as a MIC all the way down to a Dinian Bullet or a FlexiDome dome. So quite a bit of flexibility, and we're constantly adding new models on a regular basis. So this may seem relatively small, but you can look on our website to keep up to date and see as new models come available that you can use with our platform. So with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the custom use cases that we can help satisfy. So the first I want to highlight because it's a really interesting example of us being able to build a custom solution for a customer. So I'll start this app playing just so you can kind of see what we're doing. So we had a large oil and gas end user who came to us and said, we've looked around your app store, we like the idea of Azena, we like the flexibility, but we don't see anything that really fits our use case. However, we did notice that there is a fire and smoke detection app in your app store. We have something that's sort of adjacent to that, do you think you could modify it to solve our specific problem? So the problem they have is that when you're running an oil or gas rig, they're flaring off excess natural gas. And if the flare goes out, that means it's just spewing methane into the atmosphere, and it's a huge violation from the EPA. So today, the way these oil and gas companies are combating this problem is by actually sending people out in trucks with a clipboard to document whether or not that flare is still active, which is a colossal waste of resources. It's time-consuming. It's just a pain. What if there was a way to automate that process? And secondly, the other thing they're looking for is the burn clean? So what you can kind of see in the illustration here is that it's categorizing the smoke up top. We want to know how dark that smoke is, because if it's very, very dark, it indicates an unclean burn versus an appropriate burn that wouldn't constitute a fine. So we went out to our developer network, explained the use case, mostly to developers who had already had some experience in fire and smoke detection, and had them build this custom solution, which, as you can see, is telling us if the flare is present, it would alarm if the flare were to go out. And then it also tells us how dark the smoke is for analysis by the end user. And this is something that we were able to have custom built for this customer within about 2 to 3 months. So just to kind of put this in perspective, if you're talking to a very, very large manufacturer or vision analytics company, it's probably not going to be that fast of a turnaround, right, realistically. And that's why it's one of the benefits of Azena being a startup is that we're very quick, very agile, and can work with our developer partners to solve these complex problems in a relatively short turnaround time. And now I'll quickly show you an example of one of the off-the-shelf use cases, and this is one we're actually showing at the booth next door. So this is PPE inspection. So you can see this gentleman has a high-vis vest and a helmet on. As soon as he takes that helmet off, it's going to alarm. And similarly, when he takes the vest off, you'll also get an alarm. And this is something that, again, can be integrated into a VMS or into some other third-party endpoint. So the example I cited earlier with the oil and gas use case, we were sending data to their VMS, but we're also able to send the metadata to their SCADA system, which is where they process all of their industrial data on site. So we can, kind of have your cake and eat it too when it comes to security versus IoT. Another use case I wanted to quickly talk about from the custom perspective is with a large big box retailer that we're currently piloting our solution with. And I'll play another short video clip here just to give you an idea of what we're doing. Okay, so this is a large big box retailer who sells appliances. And what happens when you buy an appliance, and let's say you didn't want it or it was damaged, is that it goes back to the distribution center. And it's a third-party trucking company that does all of this, so they're not working for the big box store. So when there's a return, they bring it back to the distribution center, and at the time, they had a very low-tech way of managing these appliances. And what they were doing was putting a traffic cone on top of any returned appliances. So it's a giant red flag that, hey, this is an expensive refrigerator or dryer or whatever that has to go somewhere at some point. But essentially what was happening is it was literally falling off the truck. So it would be there for a few weeks. These third-party truck drivers would notice that it was there and essentially walk off with these appliances. And specifically, this was costing this big box retailer millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. And so they came to us and asked if we could build one of our developers could build a custom solution that would allow them to track these boxes more appropriately. So what we're seeing in this video is this developer decided to use QR codes, affix them to the boxes, and then using Bosch Intiox cameras, we're able to detect the QR code and know what doors it should or should not be leaving out of. So we can track that appliance from purchase to return the whole way through. So as you can see here, we got an alarm on a mobile app indicating that it was the incorrect door. It geolocates it so that you know exactly where you need to go to find this potential theft in progress. And you can leave notes for future improvements. So ensuring that, hey, okay, yes, that was actually a theft and we need to make some modifications in order to solve this problem. Specifically, one truck driver walked off with over $3 million in appliances using this method. So it's a very costly, that's just one guy. You would think that these big stores would have some methodology for keeping track of all this inventory, but they don't. So not only is this solution helping to reduce shrink, but it's also providing this end-to-end journey where the appliance is throughout the entire purchase process. And this was done with our partner Darvis, that you can see their name here. Yeah, you can. So what you can do, it's very similar to like the old school software method, right? So if you put it on a camera and then that camera fails, or you need to move it to a different camera just because of a customer request, that license is yours in perpetuity if it's a perpetual license. You can move it from one camera to another. That there's two main models for purchasing licenses within the App Store. Perpetual license, which is a one-time fee, and there's also the reoccurring yearly fee, depending on the app developer. Usually if it's a reoccurring yearly fee, it's because they're providing some additional value beyond just the straight analytic. There might be a nice dashboard that goes with the application as an example. Yeah, it can be. So within our device management portal, particularly in the oil and gas space, we've run into a lot of customers who do not have their networks connected to the internet, or they're extremely siloed. So we've built a version of the device management portal that lives offline. So you can actually go, it's a little bit more manual. You'd have to go in, find the update for an app, or download the new app to your PC, but then you can go onto that intranet and then push analytics out very similarly to if they were connected to the internet. So it's pretty much direct to integrator or end user depending on who's buying the camera. So as I kind of showed, if there's a specific app that's in the App Store, it's pretty much point click and then install on the camera. In terms of the developers that we work with, they're located all over the world. They range from small operations that just have a handful of folks to large corporations like Intellivision and others that have massive labor forces. So it just depends on which specific developer I guess we're talking about.
So the developer controls the code?
So we as Azena provide the platform broadly. So we give you a ton of tools if you're a developer and you're interested in joining our platform to help build out your application. So we have example apps and all sorts of things available, SDKs, to help make your life easier. So we own the underlying IP regarding the platform, but all of these developers own their own models, right? So part of the appeal of joining Azena is that if maybe you're a small to medium-sized software developer, you have some really great AI models that could potentially solve a lot of problems in the vision analytics space. This is another way to commercialize that model. So yes, the developer, generally speaking, owns the code. However, if they're developing a custom application for you, we have seen some situations where like the customer and the developer might come to some sort of agreement so that only that customer gets to use that app. So within the application store, you might have noticed, we do have the ability to list an app privately. So down here on the left, you can see My Private Apps. So for example, if you spent a lot of IP and time building an analytic or co-building an analytic with the developer, you could list it privately so that only you would be able to use it. Does that make sense? So that's one of the great things about Azena is that you don't need to think about that. So long as it's an Azena-enabled camera, they're all running roughly the same horsepower chipsets. So it's like, yeah, I don't know a great analogy, I suppose, but we do, yeah. So if you go to azena.com and under products, we have a cameras section, and you can pop in and see what devices are available. But yeah, that's one of the things that we try to remove from the equation is, will this work on this camera or not? The answer is always yes, right? Because it's Azena, we built the platform, we built the OS for the cameras, so it should work on every camera regardless of what it is. So yeah, so when it comes to the developers, what we're doing is basic vetting. Because we're technically a marketplace, we can't play favorites. So what we're doing is we do some basic validation of the application. So if they claim it's a slip and fall detection app, we'll make sure that it at least has some semblance of accomplishing that. We won't say, oh yeah, it's a good app or a bad app, but it's trying to do whatever it claims to do. We'll vet it for any malware, viruses, that sort of thing. We also vet the developers from a business perspective to make sure it's legitimate, so that it's not someone running off with your information as soon as you download the app. Broadly, from a cybersecurity perspective, we're undergoing regular penetration tests for the cloud side of things, and we have a cybersecurity team that, of course, is constantly improving and monitoring our solution from that perspective. Sure. Who owns the data? It's yours. So that's the key thing with most of our apps is that we give you these tool sets to allow you to send the data wherever you need it to go. The only time that we've seen some developers host data for customers is, again, if they might, particularly in the retail space, we have a few developers that provide some nice dashboards that show a customer, how long the wait is at their cash registers or how busy a certain department is. And in those cases, the data is still yours, but they might help host it so that they can help visualize it for you. But at the end of the day, the data is yours and it stays with you. Azena doesn't own it, and broadly speaking, the developer doesn't own it either. And so with that, that's just a brief summary of what we're capable of doing with the Azena platform.